Welcome to the Out on a Limb podcast. We are all interconnected to a greater web of consciousness. Our aim is to open your mind to a new world through having open-minded discussions about what we perceive our reality to be.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Out on a Limb podcast with your hosts Will and Allison and Samantha. And today we have another special episode for you with an amazing guest, Carol Cottrell, who we have a long history with, and I want to share that at some point. But welcome, Carol.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Carol is a psychic medium in our area, in the Charleston Tri-County area of South Carolina. And has gone on to host classes of all sorts, helping people become introduced to their own gifts and how they can develop those. And she's done quite a lot of traveling actually now, doing mediumship events and helping people to understand that it's not really mysterious or woo-woo, that this is a normal aspect of humanity, and helping people to get in touch with their own gifts. So we really appreciate all the work that you've done, Carol.
Well, thank you.
I want to start kind of with your background growing up. I wonder, did you come from a religious background? Were you familiar with all things woo-woo? How did that develop in the young Carol growing up?
Yeah, so I was actually raised Catholic. But there was things that are going on in my life, and looking back now, I can see where I was connecting with spirit at a very young age. Thinking, I guess I thought it was normal, like I would see them at night. My sister and I shared a bedroom, and I could see them at night, and I would, try to grab them. And my sister was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm trying to catch them." And she's like, "Who?" And I'm like, "Don't you see them?" So that was very, young, like 4, 5, 6 years old. I was doing that. But my family always joked that wherever we lived, because we always lived in old houses, and my mother loved to, move into an old house and renovate. And, I would always tell them things about the house and, the people that had lived there before. And that, my mom would joke, "Oh, wherever we go, the ghosts will follow Carol." I don't call them ghosts anymore, by the way. But I was pretty obsessed with reading about poltergeists and, all this different stuff. So, it just doesn't really fit in with the Catholic culture very well, though. I guess grew up like not knowing there was anything different. And really, when I got to high school, I was totally like not into it all, except for like playing with Ouija boards and things like that. But interestingly enough, when I was in my early 20s, I was dating a guy who was a Navy SEAL, and, to date myself here, we invaded Panama, and I didn't know what was going on with them. And I was very upset. It was right around Christmas time. So I was home from college, and my father said, "I'm going to read your cards for you." And I said, "You're going to do what?" And so we got out just a regular deck of cards and started telling me everything that was happening, what was going to happen. And after the boyfriend came back, he told me, "I can't give you details, but your dad was right." Like, he even nailed the date of when they were going to catch Noriega. So I was like, I went back to my dad and I'm like, "How did you do that?" So he showed me. I'm not very good at learning, so I just started playing with it myself and trying to figure out like what each card was going to mean for me and things like that, and just playing with it. And would play for years just as entertainment with friends, like, "Hey, let's do this thing." And I tell them before I started, "This isn't real. This stuff isn't real. If I get it right, it's just a coincidence. We're just doing it for fun." And everybody was coming back and saying, "You got it right. Like everything you said was right." Or they'd come back to me later on, "Everything you said was going to happen. And I'm like, "Just coincidence. Like that stuff's not real," kind of thing. So that went on for a really long time. Like, that was in my early 20s that my father showed me that. And it turns out his grandmother was a psychic who had a crystal ball and read tea leaves and taught him that stuff. So, so
that is
kind of great to find out later on.
Oh my gosh. So you had no idea until the day that your dad sat you down with cards that he was that gifted? You had no idea?
No idea.
Wow. That would be.
I thought he was crazy. I'm like, "What do you mean you're going to read my cards for me?"
Right. It was a regular deck of playing cards.
Regular cards. Yeah. And
Right.
so, I never, like I said, I would just tell people it's coincidence, it's not real and everything. And then when I finally did start to open up to stuff, I realized how that information was coming through to me. I'm like, wait, how did just looking at a deck of cards and looking at the number 8 or the jack or whatever give me that information? And it wasn't the cards at all. It was, sometimes it was psychic and sometimes it was mediumistic, people in the spirit world giving me the information. I didn't get that at all until I started to develop and learn more about how it all works. So
that's amazing. So I'm curious, have you ever talked to your dad after the fact? Because he knew that you were seeing things. He knew that these gifts were coming online for you, and yet he restrained himself and didn't say anything. Did you think you weren't ready, or why did he do that?
I don't know why. And it's really funny. He asked me once when I was younger what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I said, I want to work with ghosts. And he said, there's no such job. So
there's no such job.
So I was just like, I kind of, looking back on that now, I'm like, I think that kind of ripped my dreams away from me because, and now I always say to people, when you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing in life, look back to when you were really young and what did you say you wanted to do? Because, he told me there's no such job, but look what I'm doing now.
Right.
So yeah, he didn't really, share much about it or anything. And I don't think he understood the mediumistic side of it as much, because I remember before he passed, I would go visit him and he was in the hospital, and I was up in New York and I was going to be doing a demonstration of mediumship. So we went to visit him before, because that's where he was. And he said, well, are y'all ready for this? Like, have you got everything memorized and everything? And I'm like, Dad, that's not how it works. Like, I can't memorize anything. I'll have no idea what's going to happen. Once I'm up on that stage, whatever happens just happens. I don't know. So he didn't quite understand, like, there's nothing to memorize. There's nothing to like get ready for, or, I mean, yeah, we all have our own little rituals that we like to do before we do a demonstration, but like he didn't understand that part of it. And he would also tell me right before he died, he said, this is going to be our secret word. When I come through to your medium friends, this is what I'll say, so you know it's me. And I'm like, Dad, that's not how it works. Like, can't do that. That's not how it works. Nobody's going to get the word, So yeah, he didn't fully understand that part of it. But I'm not really sure why he never, encouraged it. It was more my mom that did, and she has no ability at all. Well, we all have ability, but she doesn't,
Didn't explore it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And your sister didn't either, really? Mm-mm. Is that
no? None of my
siblings. That it does run in families? Is that true? Is that what you have understood as well?
Well, that's what I've always, it gets passed down through generations. I think my brother's pretty intuitive. He would never admit, that he's psychic or anything like that, but he's pretty intuitive with stuff. But my other two sisters, I don't know. I don't really see it come out of them,
That is so interesting. And it's what's also fascinating is that we know a couple of mediums and a lot of people who work in the metaphysical arena who come from a Catholic background, not only religious, but Catholic, which is fascinating because actually they've changed their stance on mediumship since I wrote my 2019 book where I was investigating Christianity and how they felt about all of this sort of work. Oh. And they actually have changed their stance because it used to be that they wanted to be the only ones, doing exorcisms or talking to spirits. They had to go through them. But they have relaxed that stance, and they did come out with some sort of formal, the one, I don't know if it came from the Vatican or somebody in Europe, but that branch over there decided that it was okay for us peons, us regular people, to talk to the spirits.
The commoners.
Yeah.
Well, I think when you start having so many people do it, that like it becomes this, like, they're fighting a tide of influence there. It's just...
Yeah.
I think so many people are waking up to their own abilities, because I believe everybody's got the ability, right? I mean, we've been told we don't. Some of us push through that and start to go back to this innate ability that's been there our whole lives and start to use it in great ways, like to make daily decisions and life-changing decisions and things like that. Some of us are still so wanting to rely on the logical mind because that's how we were trained, growing up and everything. But I think so many more people are waking up to the fact that they have this ability within themselves, that I think it's getting harder and harder for the society as a whole to say this is not real, right?
Right.
So I have a question that you're kind of going around, because you were trained by someone who's a traditional, in my sense, or like I've been saying, like old paradigm way of learning to do it, and now it's kind of like you put hands on someone just to say hello, and all of a sudden you get impressions, But I was always told, going through this experience, that you can be, how's the saying go, that you can be psychic, not necessarily a medium, but if you're a medium, you're also a psychic or something like that. And so here I had been doing tarot forever and I wanted to learn mediumship, and they're like, well, understand that, you might not be a medium. And I'm kind of going, that makes no sense to me. Like I couldn't understand that. And so it took a while for me to find the right person to train me, but then, and they didn't train, they just unlocked the door, and that was kind of it. So what is your feeling on that?
So, first, I've always learned that too. Like if you're a medium, you're psychic, but you could be a psychic, not necessarily a medium. So I've heard that as well. I think we all have mediumistic ability in that we can all see the connections or get information from the spirit world, right? There are some of us that our souls want to be doing it as part of our life, so we will be pushed or push ourselves to learn as much as we possibly can. We'll push ourselves past the uncomfortable points of what it takes to develop, because our soul wants it so badly for us, right? Now, that's where it's a little bit, I don't want to say rare, because it's not rare. There's so many people out there now that are working as psychics and mediums. But that's the difference. Like we can all use this to affect our daily lives in a very wonderful way. But not all of us are going to be driven to do that hard work to develop it so much to the point where we can hold somewhat of a conversation with the spirit world and have a greater understanding of what they're sharing. I always, compare it to being an athlete. I'm a hockey player. So I always say, we all like, it's easier to relate with soccer players, because hockey players, it takes several skills to do it once. But if you're a soccer player, all the kids can go out on the field and run, right? Some of them are going to be able to kick the ball around a little bit more. Some of them are going to be able to weave in and out. But no matter what, some are going to be more driven to develop their ability, and others are going to be like, that was fun to do when I was little. I don't want to do it anymore, kind of thing. But there's others that are like, I'm going to eat the foods I need to eat. I'm going to train myself mentally to be a strong soccer player. I'm going to be out there every day. I'm going to run. I'm going to do all the stuff that I need to do to develop as a soccer player. And I think it's the same thing with this work. It's like we can all take the class to understand the ability that we have within us. Some of us are going to be like, that was really cool. Now I know how to, decide whether to go left or right, or to, like choose this thing or this thing today, and what's going to be better for me. But others are going to be like, you know what? I feel so driven to keep going, to push myself, to practice every day, to sit in meditation, to eat the things that are healthier for my body, to cut out the things that might interfere with my connections with the spirit world. Really, because as somebody who's developed, it's very uncomfortable, right? And I always tell people, if you want to do this, be prepared with getting comfortable to be very uncomfortable.
Yes.
Right? And so like, if your soul really wants it for you, then you will do all those things. If it's your ego that wants it, you probably aren't going to dig that hard to get better at it,
Very good.
And I find myself on that, not on the athletic tier of it. I took your class early on, and it's been the foundation for understanding, even to this day. And I had a bit of drive at first to really explore it. And I did a few, mediumship circles up here, and had a great time, but it's not where my passion is.
Right.
But but it's that understanding that I never thought of myself as a medium, but being able to bring that to the surface and use it. Yes, it's a skill that I have. And so it's a skill that, has to be refined. It has to be, strengthened. You never really lose it, but it just weakens. So you just have to jump back into it and strengthen it and work it again. So, but yeah, it is. And then, but, I find myself, with my other work, my channeling work, that's really my passion. And so that's where I really dive into it.
And
and that's mediumship, right?
Yeah.
You're connecting, you're getting your information from something of another realm, from another, the spirit world. So it's still mediumship. It's just a different form of it. It's not sitting with the one-on-one readings where we're in the third person or doing the evidential mediumship with messages. You're channeling it. So it's still a form of mediumship.
That's a good thing to look at.
And that's what I love, about my Awaken Your Ability class. It's like whether you want to go on and do the one-on-ones, or you want to use it for channeling, or you want to do it to write books, or you want to do it to allow channeling to come through to be an artist, or you want to do it because you want to feel better about making your own choices in life and feel more confident. So you're not always going to somebody else saying, tell me what to do,
Right.
Like that's why I created that class. And also said that those of us who are like, so this thing happened and I know it's a little crazy, but, so we can be like, it's not crazy, right? It's normal.
Yes.
It's so normal. So,
And it's so interesting going back to your soccer player kind of analogy. And I sort of talk to people about this with regard to Will, because it was a gift that he kind of coordinated before he came into this life. That was part of his incarnation plan, his path. And so, not everybody's going to be a Suzanne Giesman, for example, just to throw her name out there in terms of one that is so evidential. And not everybody's going to be a trance channel like Will. And so a lot of people will contact us and, can Will help me channel it? Well, we can, again, like you said, show you how to do it and how to recognize those feelings when they start to come in, and the breath work and all of the pieces. But not everybody's going to be as gifted. So some people come in to be a gifted pianist or a gifted soccer player or what have you. And so when people say, can this be taught? I kind of have mixed feelings. Some of the pieces can be taught, but I don't think the gift itself necessarily.
Not taught in a traditional manner of, well, here's your steps, ABC, 1, 2, 3.
And then it's just going to.
It's right. It's more of, it's facilitating the structure of understanding of what you need to be doing in order to elicit that in your experience.
And the other funny thing, and I want to hear your opinion on this, is that back in the day, and even when we first started Awakening, some of the people that we would meet that were really good mediums drank a lot and smoked and cursed and did all this crazy stuff. They didn't take care of themselves. And I know that you have talked about how clean you try to eat and you don't drink and all of that sort of stuff. And I think that does help hone your connection. But it's so interesting. And this goes back to the gift piece. If they came in to do this, then if they drink, or what have you. What is your feeling on that?
So, well, first of all, it's the drinking thing that it's part of the history of mediumship, to be honest with you. Back in the olden days, maybe not so olden days, but probably 20 years plus. That's what a lot of psychics and mediums turn to alcohol to ground themselves, right? And I don't think they were intentionally thinking like, I need to ground myself, I'll go have a drink. But it is like when you're done doing this work, and Will, I'm sure you know this, like when you're done, you're exhausted. It's really energetically taxing on you. And you've got a lot of energy that you've picked up that's like, okay, this isn't mine, this isn't mine. And if you're empathic, you're picking up everybody's stuff. So people were using alcohol to ground themselves, basically, and which ended up a lot of people drank too much alcohol from it. Or that belief, I've heard people say, well, I'm clearer when I'm drinking. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're not.
Wow.
You've surrendered your ego, like your ego is, but you're not clear on what you're saying. So, and I do want to just say, I drink alcohol. I only drink it though if I know I won't be doing readings anytime soon. Right. So I'll go have a social drink on the weekends. I had a drink Friday night because I knew I wasn't going to be doing anything that had to do with my work until today. I have a rule of at least 24 hours that I can't have any alcohol in my system. And I am one of those boring people, I guess, that's never done drugs. So, so I don't have to, include that in my thing of like, I can't have that, but yeah, alcohol, I don't have, if it's within 24 hours, if I'm going to be do readings or work related stuff, then I won't have alcohol.
I think that's what people don't realize when they are, paying us for a reading. They're paying us for all the prep, all the things we're not doing, all the things that we're setting aside so that, when we show up, like you're at your very best.
We're at 100% when we show up.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. We want to be that clear vessel. Because if there's anything that's clouding us, then we're not going to be doing the best that we can do. And that goes back to the soul being driven to be the best like you can be. It doesn't mean you're going to be the best in the world, but what can you offer in your best way possible? And our soul is driven to do that, which is very different from if my ego was just like, I just want to be a medium because I think it's really cool, but I don't want to do all the work that goes with it. So, that's one thing we really have to consider. And I usually tell people when they say to me, am I ready or am I meant to do this? First of all, I as a human being don't have the right to tell anybody whether or not they're ready or that they're supposed to do it. Your soul knows whether or not you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
And your soul will push you to do it if you are supposed to be. But if you're not wanting to do the work, you're not wanting to do the practice, the meditations, all the things that we need to do, then your soul's probably like, you know what? We got other plans. They're big plans.
Right.
They're just not that plan, So.
Right.
Yep.
And I think the other thing about the alcohol piece, I've heard people say, I get more connections after a glass of wine, but I think what that is that their inhibitions are lowered after. So they're normally kind of afraid or they have a little block, mental left brain block. But as soon as you have a drink, you're like, oh, I don't care what I look like or if I look silly or if people don't believe me. And so.
Because that's one of a medium's biggest fears is, oh, what if I'm wrong, right? And I say this to my
nothing comes
classes
through.
all the time. I'm like, just say it. Like they're saying, I'm not getting anything. I'm like, you are, but you're refusing to say it because you're afraid you're wrong. So just say it. But when we have alcohol, we don't care if we're wrong, so we're just saying stuff. So you're right. It's totally blocking that inhibition. So
maybe that should be a part of one of your classes is where, you do a cheese and wine session and then like, okay, everybody, we're just going to go around the room and see what impressions you get.
Right. But you're absolutely, you mentioned earlier that, about doing this work, it is at times it's some of the most uncomfortable that you'll ever be. And people who, for those that don't do mediumship work, it is when you're standing in front of, interestingly enough, I didn't do a lot of one-on-one sessions. After your class, I didn't do a lot of one-on-one sessions. I was more drawn to, I really want to get in front of a number of people. So that's what I did. And but it's those moments where you are connecting, but everyone's going, no. You got the head nod going, no, and you're like, you just and
that person's there
right.
and is trying to
and
say
it's the thing about it is it's not a natural place for you to put yourself where you're in a negative space. And that, from a human standpoint, it's a negative space because it's rejection. Well, if you can push through the rejection, for me, when that's happening, it bubbles up into me to even get connected stronger. And when that connection grows stronger, then they really settle in, and then I start getting more head nods and more confirmations and all that. But it's that first, okay, yep, we're here, and everyone's kind of like, oh, what are we doing? And
So how do you overcome that, Carol? How do you overcome that?
Well, it is hard and that's one of the things I teach in one of my classes is like, how do we move through the no's, right? Because it drops you out of your power, you lose your confidence, and then you lose your connection. But what I have learned is I fully trust the spirit world. And not that I don't trust people in the physical world, but if somebody in the spirit world is telling me something, yes, 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 and somebody in the physical world is telling me no, I'm going to go with what the spirit world is telling me. I believe them 100%. They have never let me down. And I remember doing a demonstration earlier this year, and a guy came through and nobody took it. And so somebody else came through and we went with that and everything. Well, the guy came back through again and nobody was taking it. And so I said to him in my head, of course, tell me where I am. Tell me who you belong to. And he said, the guy in the back row. So it was dark in the back. You couldn't see the back row. It was in a theater. So I said, I need a man in the back row to stand up. And the guy looked at me and I said, this is your brother. And he was like, yeah.
Wow.
He didn't want to take it. He was scared. He'd never been to anything like that before. That was weird, And I know probably the whole audience was like, just give up on him already. Like, he's not, nobody's going to take him. And sometimes I will say, all right, I'm going to leave it at that. And somebody on your way home is going to realize who this is. Mm-hmm. And it happens time and time again. People will email me after events and be like, oh my God, on my way home, I realized that was my ex-boyfriend, or that was this, or whatever. And I always tell people, somebody's going to realize, and don't worry, they're not going to be mad at you that you didn't take them, but they're not just showing up randomly. They're here for a reason. But yeah, it was pretty profound when that brother was kind of like, that's my brother, and you're going to make him take me, so. And he did. And it ended up being very emotional for the whole audience. So yeah, I just trust them so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've learned is just always trust them.
I want to ask you, and this is my question for me, and how you would guide someone like me, but I know that there's so many other people out there in the same boat, that, I tell people right away, I'm not a John Edwards. I'm not which I shouldn't discount myself because I am who I am and who they needed to come see. But I recognize I'm also more affordable than, and they can get in to see me sooner. But, I think that there's got to be a lot of, people who are practicing other psychic mediums, but I'm talking specifically mediumship, where, you're getting the information, you're seeing the person, you're getting the validation, all that kind of stuff, but you're not quite on that level of maybe it's of clarity or whatever with a, John Edwards or, whoever. And so do you talk to people about you don't have to be that, or, that's not necessarily the thing to strive for? Because when you see people who are the celebrity kind of whatever, everyone feels like, or who's that new guy, Tyler Henry or whatever, Henry Tyler or whatever, that everyone feels like if I'm not that, then I'm not doing it. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think I know what you mean. First of all, I always say it's fun to watch them, and it's always good to learn from watching other mediums, but don't ever compare yourself to another medium, because the worst thing can happen is watching them too much and picking up on their habits. There is one who's supposed, a very well-known medium who I used to watch all the time, and picked up on some habits that, Mavis, who was one of my mentors, said, don't ever do that again. And I was like, oh, I picked that up from one of the celebrities, kind of thing. So not trying to be like others, but also that's one thing I teach is you can learn from watching other mediums, but just go be you. Mm-hmm. Don't try to be them, because, people are drawn to the medium they come to for more than just the mediumship. Mm-hmm. It's what's authentic about you. Mm-hmm. That's important. And so that's what will bring your sitters to you, your clients to you, is the authenticness of you just being you. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to be there's times that I don't know, I'll never forget this when I had a family that was here, and the father came through in spirit and he wanted me to talk to his daughter. So I'm standing in front of her talking to her, and I saw a squirrel run in front of my face. And I was just, now, not literally, right? It was in my head. So it was my clairvoyance. I didn't know why he wanted me to say squirrel, but I knew I had to say squirrel. So I just said, there's a significance of a squirrel, and everybody else in the family starts laughing. She starts crying because it was his nickname for her. I didn't know that. And we don't have to know that stuff, right?
Yeah.
All that was important was that her dad got me to say squirrel. Right? They know the rest from there. And I always say too, your loved ones don't need me to know the whole story. That's none of my business. They're not here to fulfill Carol's curiosity about, the family stories and that stuff. None of my business. I'm just here to be that vessel that gives whatever I'm receiving. And it's more important that my client, their loved one that's sitting here with me, knows what they're talking about than me. That's just my curiosity. That's my ego wanting to go, hey, what is this all about? I need to know the drama in the family, none of my business. So we don't have to know all the details. Just give what you're getting. So, yeah.
Well, and that's a lot of expectation from the sitter. Like, they're expecting you to be able to say, the secret word, or like, I always see a red cardinal. And so, that's them. And you're kind of going, well, that's, it's like, that's not what they're saying, but it's interesting to kind of work through all of that. Very fascinated with your course.
Yeah.
It sounds like
I'm a little biased, but my course did come from my guides. Like, it was the craziest thing how I wrote that course. And I realized none of that came from me. That was all it came through in channeling. Like, I was in meditation and it just came right through me. And so say that's their course, it's not mine. I'm just there to share some of my stories that help to get people to understand, what I'm trying to say. I do love to tell. Will, you could probably share that. I tell a lot of stories.
We love stories.
And I'm sure your classes, it's been,
you were in on the very front end of
the
them.
second class or something like that. So
I think I was already in Savannah, so I think I'd probably taught it 3 or maybe 4 times at that point. I think you were probably in the 4th time at time.
Or maybe
that was what, 2015? Was it back that long ago?
I think so. Yeah.
Might have been 16.
15, 16, somewhere around there. Yeah. So I'm sure it's changed quite a bit from then too.
Yeah, and I think then I was doing it for Thursday nights or something like that.
Yeah.
Now it's all in one weekend. It's that we do it.
Do you find that the one weekend course it kind of puts it all sticks any better or puts it all together better?
I think it does. The other thing is I've been really blessed because people have been coming from all over the US and Canada to take the course. And, Charleston's such a great place to come that why wouldn't you want to come here? Right. So that's definitely worked better. I taught it online during COVID and I had a lot of people from all over the country then. But I love the in-person with this class. I think somebody told me the other day, I think you should call yourself the connector because I love connecting people to build relationships that are going to last a lifetime for them. And that happens in these classes. I see people meet each other and become friends that are friends forever afterwards, So, and I think that happens so much easier in the in-person than it would if I was just doing it online, And people have said, but I live here, I live there, or whatever. And like I said, a lot of people have come to Charleston for it. I've also started teaching it in Northern New York in the summers while I'm there. So, and I've just kind of decided, I'm willing to go anywhere and teach the class. If somebody has, enough people there that want to take it, then I'll go because I love to travel. So
are you still going to Lilydale and doing all your stuff up at Lilydale?
I haven't been going to Lilydale. I was going there a lot because that's when I was mentoring with Lisa Williams, and she was at Lilydale at that time. But I haven't been to Lilydale in a while. It's been quite a while, and I think she's actually moved from there too. So, but yeah, that's the other part of New York State. I'm way up, near,
Are you going to Omega?
No.
Oh, no.
I haven't been because I'm even further. I'm 8 hours up from New York City. I'm on the Canadian border, way up, closer to Vermont than I would be to.
Okay, yeah, you're way up there then, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I've been teaching up there and had people from different parts of New York State have traveled up there for the class. But yeah, awesome. And then I'm doing retreats too. So I've done retreats in Ireland and Scotland and looking at doing one in Northern England. So, so yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, you've just taken off. It's beautiful to watch. I wonder, since you trained with Mavis, she says it Patilla, is that right? Because I always want to do the Spanish Patilla. But she's a famous UK medium. And so you've also trained under or with some American.
All of my teachers have been British, believe it or not.
So what do you think about the differences between how they practice mediumship in the UK and how we do over here?
So Lisa Williams was my first mentor. She is from the UK, but she was self-taught. And she came in, Merv Griffin, I think it was, brought her to LA because she had a show way back, like one of the first psychic mediumship shows.
Oh, wow.
And then she moved to Lilydale, and that's when I was mentoring with her. I'd go up there and spend time with her there. So she was my first mentor. I also took several classes with Tony Stockwell, who's also from England. And he was, came up in the spiritualist church. And then, of course, Mavis, who is one of the most respected mediums of England, and she's too. The spiritualist church has a lot of rules. It was very different. So it kind of reminded me, and there's nothing against the spiritualist church at all, but it kind of brought me back to Catholicism with all the rules and stuff. And so there was a lot that I just decided, this doesn't feel right for me. I do feel like the ethics of mediumship are extremely important. And you probably remember me saying over and over and over in class, like never walk up to somebody and give them a message without their permission to do so, or without them asking for it. No unsolicited messages, right? But there's some things from the spiritualist church that I was just like, this makes me feel a little bit confined. For instance, I created this thing called a very small group event. And usually when you're doing a demonstration, you'll always stick to mediumship. And demonstration is when there's an audience and not everybody is going to get a reading. But I was kind of like, I want to create something that's kind of more fun and lets people see all the different pieces of it. So I created these small group events. And the intention is everybody will get a message. I just have no idea what kind of message they're going to get. So some of them will get mediumship, some of them will get psychic, some of them will get messages from their guides. And it's kind of a fun event to do with a small group. And that was something like, if you're in the spiritualist church and you're given mediumship readings, no psychic. Psychic's not allowed, but I have a very strong belief too that your sitter, your client needs to know where you're getting the information from. So if I'm getting information psychically from them, I will say, this is psychic. I'm getting this from your energy. Okay. There's nobody in the spirit world telling me this. Then, if it's a loved one of theirs, I tell them, oh, this is coming from your mom, your dad, your, whatever it is. And then if it's information that's coming from their guides, I explain to them that, like, this is not coming from your energy. It's not coming from your loved one. This is your guides that are coming forward to share this with us. Because I think it's really important that people know where the information is coming from.
Yes.
And also it's important for, as I'm teaching people how to use these abilities, for them to know the difference of, there's a lot of people out there saying that they're mediums. And they're not. They're psychically connecting in with their sitter, and then picking up on who the sitter misses or would want to hear from, kind of thing. And, those people probably are not doing that maliciously, but they just don't know that they're actually not working mediumistically, that they're psychically picking up the information. So, I just think it's really important for us as the vessel to know how we're getting it, and also for our clients to know where the information is coming from too.
That is so fascinating, because when we do channeling events, in the beginning, it was only the collective, Will's four guides, Archangel Michael, Raphael, Source, and Enoch. And so they came in as a collective energy and would speak as such. But then I was picking up that one would step forward depending upon the question. So I would start to ask who was primarily answering that question. And then it was to the point where they were just the gatekeeper and he's opening to the whole quantum. And so all kinds of different energies will come through and answer questions. And so in the beginning, they would tell me, you don't need to ask who. Who is not the most important thing, because it tends to feed the ego. Oh, Archangel Michael came in for you, but only blah, blah, blah came in for me. And they don't like that. And they're like, it really doesn't matter who it is. And they'll tell us that too when we're training people. Sense the energies first. Feel the energies in your body. Connect with the energies before asking who it is. But to your point, now that I understand that concept, I'll occasionally ask who it is, because I think it's important for an answer, if it's an extraterrestrial answering that question versus an angel answering, or versus your higher self answering, or source, that helps you to understand the answer when you know which dimension or where it's coming from, right? Because the angels have never been embodied. They don't understand the same kind of human aspects as a fifth dimensional extraterrestrial does, who's in a body somewhere. So
I agree with that part of it. I will tell you, long ago, my guides told me that when I'm working with other people's guides, it was not my place to tell them who the guide was. Like, what is the description, physical description? What is the name? They said that's a personal relationship that needs to be built. And to be honest, that is an ego thing, right? Like, oh, is my guide, like, I don't know, Native American, like healer, or, like kind of all that stuff that we all want to put with something. And they pointed out to me, when they talk as we. It's not I, it's we when they're speaking to us, right? So they're like, that's a human thing that we need to have put a human identity to the guide and a human name to the guide. That's what we need. It's not necessarily what they really are, these different human or animal physical beings. But they'll do that because it's helpful to us to understand it, believe it, comprehend it, and everything. But they were very clear to me very early on, like, not your place to say to somebody, oh, I have this male, doctor coming in with his, medical case coming, and his name is James, like, not my place to do that at all. Here's what they want you to know, to help you move forward with stuff. And if you want to build a relationship with them and start to put a physical identity with them, you can do that. And here's some steps of how to start to connect with your own guides, that
exactly. Kind of yeah. We don't want to disempower the client or the person, right?
Right.
Or they hear, like, you might see something, and then they're like, well, somebody else told me something differently. And, it's like, so then all of a sudden, whatever's coming through, they invalidate it because they're like, well, no, that can't be my guide. I was curious, I have people come in and they'll say, they want to come in for guidance. They're looking for, like, to me, that's higher self. Like, you want to reach out to your higher self or your guides or whatever. But they're like, so I want to know what Uncle Joe would say to do with this situation, because he always advised me in life, or because I've been to other mediums and they're like, oh, your uncle's coming in telling you this. And I know from my standpoint, I feel like that's limited compared to what your guides who know your complete plan would say. So what do you say, or how do you view that?
I usually let people know, first of all, our loved ones don't typically give us the future, right? And I don't know if that's because they're like, this is your journey and I'm staying out of it, or what, but I always tell people, you can ask Uncle Joe his opinion, but just remember, in the physical world, Uncle Joe's opinion might not have been right. And, maybe his opinion's not the right thing to be asking for right now. Maybe that's just his opinion. But I don't find that loved ones in the spirit world give a lot about what's to come, except for grandparents and parents who want to talk about a baby that's coming for some reason. They do. But it's usually because the person is already pregnant and just doesn't know it. Yeah, it's like a knowledge that they have of something that's already in the works, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I usually say to somebody, if you're looking for guidance about, things that are coming up in life, let's start out psychically, where I just tap into you, your energy, your soul kind of thing. And then I'm bringing in your guides. I shouldn't say I'm bringing them in, they're coming in, and they're going to give us additional information that'll help you with what you need to know to move forward with whatever's coming up psychically.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, how do you, for example, a guide that might have been a human in a past life, how do you differentiate? How were you taught to differentiate by your guides the difference between a spirit guide coming in and an actual relative?
For me, it's the energy feels different. Yeah, and that's just, I had to learn that. Like, like I do teach about our guides in my Awaken Your Ability class, but I always tell people, you're going to have to learn. Like, this is another thing of practice, 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 because that's how you learn the difference in the frequency, Now, there's a lot of mediums that work with angels. I have had angels, I could probably still say a handful of times in all the years that I've done this show up. But I know immediately that it's an angel versus a guide because the frequency feels different for me. I don't think that angels dislike me, but it's just not a frequency that I'm working at, So, but I have had them, when I'm doing breath work for myself or something like that, it's always angels that come through, that give me information, not for other people, but for my own path of what am I supposed to do now? And that's how the whole retreat thing came up. I was doing breath work, and it very, very clearly came up of like, time to do retreats. And I'm like, where? And they started Ireland, Scotland, listing them up. And that there was supposed to be a connection to the Celtic spirituality for them. So we do a lot of Celtic stuff when we're over there.
Wow.
That sounds amazing. Mm-hmm. I wonder, I think a lot of times people will see a psychic or a medium and think that we can predict the future, or that we know what's going to happen, or that you always make the best decisions. And talk to the audience about that, and how then do you stay sane and at peace and at ease, particularly given the turmoil that our planet is in right now?
I think for me, staying sane is I do not watch the news. I try to stay away from everything that's fear-based, And a lot of people have said, well, that's not good that you don't watch the news. You don't know what's going on. And I'm like, I don't know if what I'm being told is truth anyway. So when I need to know something, I do trance. I don't know if there's another medium that I've been working with for years. Her name is Carissa. Eva, and she and I do a lot of events together, but we also work together consistently. And so we try to once a week sit in trance, and one of us will go into trance while the other asks questions, and it's channeling. We're working with guides, galactic beings, coming through with information. And so we just say, like, hey, what's coming up here? Like, what do we need to know? Not to put out to the masses, but for our own, and we're asking for information too. Like, what do you need us to do? What do we need to be doing to continue to stay, in the light versus going into that fear-based stuff. And I don't, when people ask me though, like, oh, and this rarely happens, to be honest with you, I think maybe twice in my whole time of being a psychic medium, have people said, can you tell me what's coming in the future for all of humanity? Nobody wants to know that. They want to know what's going on for them individually. So yeah, it's more of tapping into that. But I always tell everybody, don't turn to another human being to tell you. Like, always, I said, I can tell you this right now, but you have to tap into yourself. If that doesn't feel true to you, then throw it away. Like, it doesn't mean anything. The only thing that means something is what feels true to you and your soul. So, I think you mentioned, like, we need to empower people. And that's why I always say I'd love to teach people to fish versus handing the fish, because everybody has this incredible power within them. We don't need other people to validate that. So
exactly.
That's beautiful.
I would love it if everybody started to recognize I have the answers. I don't need to go to somebody to give me the answers. I got them.
Right. And that's what we try to help our audience to understand in terms of finding a spiritual mentor versus a guru type of person. If the person is guiding you inward and helping you to develop your own discernment rather than telling you what to do, or it's my way or the highway. And there are plenty of those folks out there, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's funny because I can think of a couple of times now where somebody has said, well, posed a question of what they're supposed to do. And I don't tell people what they're supposed to do, but I remember very clearly guides saying to me, well, they already have the answer, so turn it around on them, And so in the session, I'm turning around like, so you tell me what you're supposed to do kind of thing. And I'm like, they're probably going to be like, wait, I paid for this, but
Exactly.
you got the answer within you. And nobody's ever said that, to be honest. Nobody's ever been like, well, I paid you, you tell me. They immediately give the answer because it's already within them, and my guides have said to me, like, I did that because they already knew. You don't need them to tell, they don't need you to tell them. So yeah, I definitely think teaching people to just trust what their own gut is telling them is so much better than telling somebody what to do.
I mean, we've had personal, when we do higher self channelings, we've had a number of higher selves that Allison will ask the question while I'm in trance, and immediately the response is, well, you already know the answer of what you're asking. But that isn't.
They say it to me a lot too.
Right. But that isn't really what you're looking for. You're not looking for the answer to that. You're looking for something that's, a level up from that. And so then that's where the information comes in. Because they already know what that question that they're asking. They already know the answer to it. It's just they don't want to own that answer.
And they'll also tell us, the guides, the question you're asking tells us, the guides, how to respond to you and what you're available or what you're able to understand at this point or comprehend. In other words, if you're asking higher level questions, then they understand that you get it now and we can go a little bit further with you. But if you're asking these basic questions, then you're not there yet and we're not going to give you those answers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you ever, during this whole journey, had what we would call a dark night of the soul? Did you ever want to throw in the towel? Did you tell the guides, forget it, I'm not interested?
Yeah, we haven't asked anyone.
Did you feel that they had abandoned you? Was there anything?
Yeah.
Oh my God, so many times,
You kind of had a moment. You kind of had a moment like that during our class. Because the sessions were all backing up, and I don't know. There was a whole thing that went, and it was like, I may have to step away, or I might have to put this on hold for a while because it was just getting too overwhelming. I mean, you were very overwhelmed at that point.
Yeah. I think I was
Very
really,
Yeah.
my schedule was, like people were booked months out. So it was just like, oh my God, I don't have any freedom in my life because it's like I'm booked for months out kind of thing. And also like, it's really hard that, you give a reading that you're not happy with yourself, kind of thing, which I've had to learn to just let that go. This is not about me. That is a really hard lesson. Like all I can give is what I'm receiving. It is not about me. It's not about a performance. It's not about how good was my evidence today kind of thing. But there were a lot of times early on that I was like, I can't do this. Somebody being mean to me at a reading, because there are people are grieving when they come in. And sometimes they take that out on you. Yeah. And, so there were times that I would call Carissa and say, I'm going to quit. I'm done. And, and that's why I always tell my students too, like find somebody else who's doing this work, right? My husband is wonderful, but he doesn't get it. He's not in this work. He doesn't know, what you're going through. So him telling me like, it's fine, just go back to work tomorrow, that's not helpful. So, but somebody else who's going through it and has your back and is ready to talk you off the ledge when you're like, I'm done. And I'll tell you, all the rule stuff and how that group thing got created was the small group thing that I was talking about. I was ready to quit and I called Carissa and she said, why don't you get a reading with that psychic that Tony Stockwell goes to all the time? So I messaged the woman thinking it'll be months before she can get me in. And she's in England. And so it was like, I found her on Facebook, sent a message, said, when's your next availability? I'm available now, love. And then all of a sudden, my thing pops, her face pops up on my screen. Like she video messaged me right back. And I'm like, oh my God, and so there's no way this woman could have any information about me. Like it was 2 seconds from the time I messaged her. And she immediately said, you are a psychic, you're a medium, you're doing this work, you're teaching this work, and the spirits are afraid, guide, that you're going to leave. and they need you as a teacher. And so they're telling me to tell you it's time to start having some fun with this, right? Like not making it so hard on yourself all the time. And I'm like, fun with it. So people are always like, wait, there's so much responsibility. There is so much responsibility, but it doesn't mean that we have to hate the work, right? And she said, you've had some incredible teachers, but they've put a lot of rules on you. And so you're struggling. You're trying to stay in this box and you're struggling with it. So she said, so what I want you to do today is I want you to take a deck of tarot cards to work with you and do a psychic reading. Now, I wasn't doing psychic readings at the time. I was just like, and I certainly wasn't doing tarot, but I had a tarot deck. So I brought it with me and I did a reading, and I don't read tarot the way most people do, but I did my own version of it. And I was like, oh, that was fun. Like that took all this weight off of me. And that's when I'm like, I'm going to start getting creative. I'm going to start developing stuff that fits for me versus trying to be all these other incredible mediums that are out there. I just want to be me and creating my own stuff. And that really helped me a lot. Like, because I was ready to walk away. I'm like, I can't be, I can't do 24 hours a day of readings and be what everybody needs me to be. And you feel all this pressure, and it just got to be too much. And I know somebody told me once that a lot of mediums end up leaving the work between 10 and 15 years in. And, that's right where I was probably at the time. So,
Interesting.
Yeah. So
It's almost like it's an up level. And it's probably like that with anything. I mean, 10 to 15 years in any job, you're ready to pull your hair out and get the heck out of there. But it's an up leveling. How can I make this more fun and creative? What can I do to make this more nourishing for me, even if I have to stay in the same employer or whatever? And so that's a good point. And you've up leveled your game now because of that. And I also have this vision of all of the guides up there going, get her in with that psychic right now. Open up that
shuffling it all around.
We can't have this happen. It's like all this turmoil up there going. Exactly.
Yeah. It was crazy. It was the first things that came out of her mouth. She's like, they're afraid you're going to leave, and you cannot leave. We need you. They need you. So I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
Which also leads, though, to the appreciation that they have for us doing this work. They understand, for the most part, how hard it is to be a human being and how hard it is to do this work, and what an honor it is for them to connect with you and have a relationship with you. And they appreciate that.
I love that you said that, because I remember early on when I was first like trying to teach myself all this different stuff about how to use color and everything. And I was in the car, my son was driving, and I was having a little conversation with my guides and said to them, I'm so grateful that you guys are letting me do this work. And they said, what you don't understand, Carol, is we are so grateful that you are doing the work.
Right.
And I just started crying, and my son's like, what? And I wasn't a big crier back then, but I was just like, oh my God, they're grateful to us for doing this. And it really hit me. And so now I try to remind people of that when I'm teaching, and especially when I'm teaching about blending, which is like the early stages of, going into trance. It's a very, but just blending in with them. And I always say, you're going to tell them thank you at the end, and be open to receiving their gratitude back to you for allowing them to do it too. So, that hit me so hard. And it's such a good point, Allison, to make, that they are very grateful to the people who are willing to do the work for it too,
Exactly. Thank you for that.
I'm curious, you mentioned you have kids. So how do your kids handle, I always love it. How do your kids handle, your
My
abilities?
mom's a medium.
Yeah. Are they all like on board and wanting to bring their friends over, or they're just like, oh geez, my mom is so weird?
Or bring you to career day at their school?
Yeah.
Well, my kids are way past that. My son is 32. So,
Okay.
So,
my kid's age, yeah.
And he has the ability himself, but like when he was a teenager, he'd be like, go see my mom. If somebody showed up to him, he'd be like, go to my mom. And I think he might be a little bit embarrassed about it, because he's a chef, and I went to the restaurant a few weeks ago and called and made a reservation. Didn't give him my last name, just gave him my first name. And I told him I'm coming, but I didn't tell him, my last name or anything. And he's like, they're going to know who you are. And he was so embarrassed by it. And I was like, they won't know. I just gave him my first name. But he was really quite embarrassed. My daughter is 22, and her friends kind of grew up with it because I got started when they were young. And so they would come to the house and, with their mom's permissions, I do Reiki with them or teach them a little bit about tapping into their own intuition. Some of them even comes and takes some of my classes now. So and my daughter goes on the retreats with me as my assistant. Wow. So she's like, she always tells people she had a boyfriend who did not believe in it at all. And she's like, all I can tell you is just go watch her work. And then, you'll know, kind of.
Yeah.
But she's like, she's still not quite sure what she believes about what's going on in the afterlife and everything. She's like, but I know when I watch you, I'm like, there's no way she could know that stuff, so.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
That is. So I know you mentioned how important it is for us to trust our inner guidance. What other advice would you give the audience in terms of the would-be mediums who are out there?
Well, first of all, you're not crazy. Just accepting it, what you're receiving is truth and everything. And allow yourself to explore it, right? There's so many people that are afraid to explore because they're afraid of what everybody's going to say. And I get there. I've been there. I kept pushing it away for a long time, of like, no, I don't want anybody to call me crazy. I don't want, especially since I was a marketing executive in town and knew a lot of people in town. So I just allow yourself to explore it without worrying about judgment from other people is probably one of the biggest things. We have to stop worrying about what other people think about what we're here to do. So yeah.
That is so important. Stop listening to the external and go inside, especially now.
I can't tell you how many people, though, that say, oh, I don't believe in any of that stuff. But once I sit and have a conversation with them, they've suddenly like, oh, yeah, can I tell you what happened to me this one time?
Right.
It's just like, oh, I thought you didn't believe in it. But they do. People do in their heart. They believe it. It's just they got to get it out of their head.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly.
Well, and they worry about what people are going to think by them just agreeing with you that, about the concepts. It's like a daisy chain thing kind of going on, it's sort of funny how it works, but people just have to realize that, nobody really cares what you're doing.
Right. Yeah.
The people that matter.
We put more pressure on ourselves for what we're doing than anybody else.
Yeah. And it is true. Yeah. People are very self-absorbed. They're more concerned about how they look.
Right. And I think so many people are like, well, then I need to be able to prove it to people. No, that is not our job. Our job is not to prove anything to anyone. If somebody wants to have a different belief, let them have that different belief. Mm-hmm. That's not for us to force what we do or what we believe on anybody. And we're not here to prove anything to anybody, just to be the vessel. And that's it.
That's a very liberating thought. Like just
took the word out of my mouth. Yes.
The moment that you step into that and realize the information coming through is you have to trust that first. And, that's your primary objective is that relationship above, within, however you want to look at it.
For me, when I first started doing the trance work and for clients, every time a session would end and the Zoom would go off or the person would leave here, I'd look at Allison. Okay, how did it go? Did I say the right things? Did the right things come? I wasn't, even though I trusted myself enough to go in a trance, I didn't trust what was coming through trance.
And that's partially because you didn't know what came through.
Right, because I didn't know what came through.
Right. I was going to say, you probably didn't even know what was coming through.
I had no idea. But there was a moment that it was like a night and day thing where I just released from all that. And I just was like, I have to, if I'm trusting enough to go in to do this work, then I have to come out of it with the same amount of trust. And when I started doing that, it felt like I up-leveled at that point because it felt like the connection became even stronger and even clearer, even though it was already clear. It just, for me, it felt even more empowering. So yeah.
Because you were more relaxed.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a whole cycle. Like I also teach people, like, you look at what language you're using when you're giving information. If you're saying, well, maybe it could be, is it, then we're taking ourselves out of our power. But when we trust what we're receiving and saying, this is what I'm getting, and like give it as a statement and no like ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like it's just, this is what I'm receiving. We find our power and then the connections become even stronger. So yeah, it's a circle there. Once you say the certain things that pull you out of the power, your connection will pull away. So.
Right.
Very
And
good
it's
point.
also your guides telling you that you're ready or you're not ready. They know when you're ready. And when you commit and when you trust, they know you're ready.
Yeah.
And they'll give you more.
Yep.
Well, Carol, it was such a pleasure to have you on. We're so thankful that you graced us with your presence today. How can people best find you and follow what you're doing and sign up for some classes and so forth?
Yeah, so there's my website, which is just my name, Carol Cottrell, and the last name is spelled Cottrell. So it's just carolcottrell.com is my website, and you can find all my classes and stuff on there. I do have an Awaken Your Ability class. That's for everybody, and that's coming up in January.
Awesome.
I can't remember. I think January 9th through 11th or whatever. And then I have more levels after that if people are interested in continuing on. And there's some retreats that are coming up in 2025. I'm also on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. Just look up my name, Carol Cottrell, Spiritual Medium. And I now have an assistant who just got me on TikTok. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know anything about TikTok.
Oh boy.
See her.
I've been for the last 2 weeks, I've been taking a deep dive into TikTok and doing a bunch of stuff on TikTok and trying to play around with
That's
it. So
funny.
yeah.
Every time I pull up my feed, there's Will's face.
That's funny.
I mean, cut a lot out or something.
Yeah. I mean,
Good for you. I don't know anything about it. I was just like, I'll just do whatever she
I
tells
wish I
me.
had an assistant that would do that stuff for me because it's
You have an assistant, but I'm not doing TikTok.
You're lucky. Yeah, you've got somebody that can help. I mean, I have been saying I need an assistant for probably at least 8 years now.
Yeah.
And I finally did it like in September. And it has changed my life. It's amazing. So
That's
Awesome,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, all of those details will be down in the description box. And we want to thank our audience for joining us again for another episode. Please hit the thumbs up, like and share, and hit the notification bell. And we will see you all next time.
See y'all. Bye-bye.
thank you.